Well, hello APUSHers, this is Mr. Rains, and in today's video, we are going to be looking at the essentials, the top 5 must-knows for Period 2. Of course, this won't substitute for you doing your readings, paying attention in class, or taking good notes, but if you're looking for a quick review of Period 2, then you've come to the right place. So let's get started. Period 2 will cover the development of the 13 English colonies in America. So our number 1 must-know for Period 2 is the road to self-government. From the onset of the first colony in America, Jamestown, we see the beginnings of self-government, a foundational idea for Americans even today. The colony of Jamestown established a legislative body known as the House of Burgesses. Though voters were limited to white land-owning males, it did allow average citizens a voice in what happens in their colony. In Massachusetts, the Pilgrims would draft a foundational document for self-government, the Mayflower Compact. This document is the first in America to proclaim the right to self-government while still proclaiming loyalty to the King of England. The ability to develop freedoms in self-government will only increase in the colonies during the period of salutary neglect. England was so preoccupied with political and social upheaval that the colonies were relatively left alone to develop their love for self-government. Our number 2 must-know is the introduction of slavery into America. Unfortunately, often the prosperity that some experienced in the Americas was done on the backs of slaves. We see the first African slaves introduced into America at the colony of Jamestown in the year 1619, and this dependence on slave labor will only grow. Originally, much of the labor force included indentured servants. Those were people who came willingly to serve for a set number of years. However, when their terms of service were up, they were free to go and claim the land on their own. But things will change, however, after Bacon's Rebellion, when indentured servants led a violent attack against Jamestown. Bacon's Rebellion marks a major shift from the use of indentured servants to the predominance of African slave labor. An economic system would ultimately develop between America, Europe, and Africa, the triangular trade system. This trade system included the horrendous Middle Passage, where Africans were captured as slaves and sent on a perilous journey on packed ships to America. Many would die on these trips, and those that did survive were exposed to the brutal system of forced labor. Of course, there was resistance, including at times violent slave revolts, like Stono Rebellion. But for most, there was no escape from the institution of slavery. And this issue of slavery will eventually divide Americans and remains, even to this day, a stain on our history. Number 3 must-know is the colonial regions. There were, of course, 13 original English colonies, but it's best to divide them into 3 different distinct regions: Southern, Middle, and New England. The Southern region were settled mostly by men looking for profit. The Southern economy would develop around cash crops. First, it would be tobacco, and later, cotton. This would be the region that also heavily depended upon slave labor. Next, we had the Middle colonies. These were the most diverse. In these colonies, you would find a broad range of European settlers. Rich soil would allow for successful subsistence farming. The Middle region was also the place that had the greatest diversity in terms of religion as well, with settlers like the Quakers that allowed for religious tolerance. And finally, we have the New England colonies, and these were generally settled for religious reasons. You would often see colonies where religion and government would even be mixed together into one. Unlike the South, the New England colonies would be established by large family groups. And the New England colonies would place the greatest emphasis on education. The likely reason for this? Well, it was to encourage settlers to read their Bible. Remember, these settlements were often religiously motivated. Number 4, must know, Period 2, is the Enlightenment and the Great Awakening. Many of the foundational ideas of America would stem from the Enlightenment and the Great Awakening. First, the Enlightenment, or the Age of Reason, would challenge traditional ways of viewing the world, including the way we view government itself. Enlightenment thinkers like John Locke suggested that people are born with natural rights like life, liberty, and property, and the ideal government would honor citizens' natural rights, and laws would be developed on the concept of consent of the governed. Locke would even suggest that citizens could overthrow a government that doesn't honor their very natural rights. In America, our founding fathers, like Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson, would take these ideas very seriously and eventually implement them into our founding documents. The Great Awakening not only demonstrated a commitment in America to religious freedom, but encouraged people to challenge traditional ideas. Both the Enlightenment and the Great Awakening would ingrain in American culture the idea that no leader, no idea would be accepted on face value alone, but would be tested and challenged. And this struggle for truth and freedom would be emblematic of who we are as a people. Now finally, number 5, the continual struggle of Native Americans. As colonial societies began to grow, Native Americans attempted to adapt to their quickly changing lifestyle. Environmental changes, like the destruction of buffalo populations, meant that Native peoples would need to find new food sources. European diseases continued to plague Native Americans as well, and disease would often force tribes to change. Individuals who were often left all alone when their tribes died out had to cope and join together with others to survive. This is known as tribalization. Some Native Americans decided that survival meant to adapt and accept European culture. These Native Americans were often called praying Indians because of their conversions to Christianity. Sometimes, like we've discussed before, Native Americans would attack. King Philip's War is the largest Indian attack in colonial America. King Philip's War was a 3-year battle between New England settlers and the Native Americans that ultimately did not end well for the Native Americans. Okay, there you have it, the top 5 for Period 2. Leave a comment below, or if you've benefited from any of these videos, remember to like and subscribe. See you next time.